Welcome to the Pat White Show.
Hurricane Milton has now passed Florida, but the damage has been done. They say it's somewhere between $10 and $20 billion worth of insured losses. And that estimate may be low, but I can tell you this. If you have insurance and you don't live in Florida, guess what? Your rates are probably going to go up. That's going to happen because insurance companies spread the risk around to everybody. And like I said, Florida, 2 hurricanes in a couple of weeks, that has wreaked a lot of damage. And lives were lost down in Florida with Milton. Most of them were not because of the hurricane and the wind and the water. Most of them were because of over 120 tornadoes. Had 120 tornado warnings. Tornadoes were everywhere in Florida, places you'd think they don't have tornadoes. But they did. People died. I don't know the final death count, and unfortunately it's probably going to be higher than anybody wants to hear about. But that's what happened. Now, it isn't just the fact of flooded homes. Here's another big problem that they have discovered down in Florida. Checking license registrations and vehicle registrations, turns out that down in Florida there's 55,000 electric vehicles. You heard me right, 55,000. And if you happen to own an electric vehicle and it got flooded, maybe in your garage or your carport or out in the street, whatever it was, the authorities are saying, get it the hell out of your house or your carport and get it away from the house. Because water and lithium batteries are a deadly combination. And it'd be easier to take care of a burnt car than it is a burnt down house. Yeah, that is the problem. Water and lithium batteries, cars tend to explode if they're electric vehicles. Fire departments will tell you about this. They know that it exists. Except when they go on to a call for a car fire, they don't know if it's an electric vehicle or not. Because they don't want to dump water on an electric car burning. Just makes the problem worse. A lot of times they just let the car burn. Because you got to have the right type of fire suppressant on an electric vehicle. Not everybody has it, or not everybody has it with them when they approach a fire. So that's the problem down in Florida right now. But is there another potential hurricane lurking in the Gulf of Mexico? Hate to say it, folks, but there is. What will it do? Where will it go? Nobody knows. But right now, Mother Nature ain't done being ugly. It's going to happen again. We just don't know where.
Coming up next.
Donald Trump has thrown a whole lot of political rallies in cities around the country. I mean, you go to TV every night and he's got a rally in this city and a rally in that city. One of the more recent ones, he went back to Butler, Pennsylvania, the place where somebody tried to kill him, and had another debate, or another rally. That's what he had, a rally. This time, thousands upon thousands of people showed up for the rally, and I mean thousands. Showed up for his rally, and it was kind of cool. He started it off in an apropos way, looked at a sign, a billboard that he was looking at, and he looked at the audience and he said, "As I was saying," and the crowd erupted. Picked up right where he was left off. All right, fine and dandy. But now Donald Trump's saying that he is going to have a rally in New York, New York. New York is Democrat. You got 8 million people in New York City, Democrats. State's Democrat. State hasn't voted for a Republican since Ronald Reagan in 1984. That's the last time New York voted for a Republican in anything. Well, Donald Trump wants to have a rally in New York City, and none other than, you ready? Madison Square Garden. Yep. Madison Square Garden holds 19,500 people. And my guess is probably the only person capable of filling Madison Square Garden right now is Caitlin Clark of the Indiana Fever, because everybody wants to see her play basketball. That's just my guess. And maybe Billy Joel. But I think he's already playing the Garden, and he doesn't, frankly, fills the place up, what I'm told. But Donald Trump says he wants to have a rally there in New York City on October 27th. Can he fill Madison Square Garden? Are there enough people who are thinking about voting for a Republican willing to drive to New York City, pay the tolls to get in there, pay an exorbitant amount of parking fee, go into that mess called New York City, and go to Madison Square Garden for a rally? For someone who could lose. And it would cost you a whole lot of money to make a trip like that. So would he fill Madison Square Garden? That's a good question. Don't know. But that's what he's talking about doing. Is that saying something, what's going on, what might be happening across America? Hard to say. I'm just telling you. Donald Trump, Madison Square Garden, October 27th. Now that's going to be a rally if it happens. Just passing that along in case you want to make your reservations now. Or not. Your call.
Coming up next.
Well, in this entire presidential campaign, we have had a total of one debate. One. That's all we've had. And Kamala Trump, well, she doesn't like doing press conferences, but she'll go on to a Colbert show or some podcast I never heard of, or go on with The View, and well, that's where she's going to, have things happen. But she did have her interview on CBS and on 60 Minutes, and that didn't go well. Now, here's the deal. Would you like to see another debate? I mean, another debate, not on ABC, not on NBC or CBS. How about seeing it on Fox? Brett Baer and Martha McCallum would be the two moderators as compared to the moderators for the other networks. I know they would ask questions, they'd ask follow-up questions, and it'd be an interesting debate. Now, they're willing to hold it on October 24th or October 27th, whatever the candidates choose. Well, remember, during the first debate, 10.4 million people watched the debate on Fox as compared to ABC, CNN, NBC, CBS, whatever. 10.4 million chose Fox. So Fox has said, hey, we'll hold a debate. Let you guys check it out like, a little more than a week before the election. Give everybody a final chance to see who's who and what's what. Wouldn't that be an interesting debate? Now, question is, will they do it? Well, my guess is this. My guess is Donald Trump would say, yeah, bring it on. But my guess also is that Kamala Harris's people are going to go, nah, don't think we want to do that. Because you see at debates now, the rules are you all just stand there. You don't have notes, you don't have anything. Yeah, maybe a pad of paper and a pencil to write down stuff with, but it's all off the cuff. And right now, off the cuff is probably not the best thing for Kamala Harris. Just saying, without a teleprompter, she seems to have a bit of a problem. Well, a bit of a problem. That's about all I can say. But I can tell you this. The offer now stands on the table. If they want to have a debate on October 24th or 27th, the Fox News Network is willing to give them everything they've got, set it up, give them a debate, the last debate before the election is held, a week or so later. But will they do it? Well, my guess is it ain't going to happen. One party would be willing to do it, but I seriously doubt another party wouldn't. It's just how politics works, folks. If you think you're winning, go on and talk. If you think you're going to lose, don't say nothing. It's kind of the way politics works, apparently. Now you know something you didn't know before.
Coming up next.
Well, before we get into anything else, allow me to tell you a little bit about my background. You see, I went to college on a journalism scholarship in the late 1960s. And in that institution, when you're learning about journalism, well, if you're going to write a story, you are involved with very specific things. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. That's what the story contains. Nowhere in that story is an O as for opinion. That's how it was back in journalism school when I went through to it. But now, today, it's not the same. I don't know what it changed. I don't know why it changed. But But let me give you a perfect example of what's going on now that I am not happy about. 60 Minutes. Well, 60 Minutes used to be a really good show back in the days, the 60s, when they had real hard journalism. And they would ask the hard questions, and people were asked to be on 60 Minutes. They came in fear because, well, 60 Minutes, they were going to ask you the tough stuff. And even the Mike Wallaces and the Morley Safers and all those folks, I mean, it was hard journalism. Well, not today anymore. It's changed. So there I'm watching the news on Sunday morning, and you see a promo for Kamala Harris being on 60 Minutes, finally giving a big-time interview on a national network. Saw the promo for it. It was on Meet the Press, and they were asking her about Israel, Netanyahu, and she made an answer. And they also ran that promo during the day, so that you would tune in to 60 Minutes that night to watch it. Well, Bill Whitaker was the guy, and he did his best. I mean, he had some good questions, a lot of softball stuff, but there were some good questions. He tried to probe a little bit farther. And when he asked that one particular question that you saw on the CBS Meet the Press, you saw it during the day on the promos, when he asked the question, the answer was totally different. That's right. CBS edited the responses, and they did it more than once. Now, what does that tell you? Well, that tells you that you are not getting journalism now on most of the networks. Not all of them, most of them. CBS, unfortunately, is one of those that is not being honest. They're taking a response from one question and adding it to a question, another question. This is blatantly yellow journalism, folks. There's no other way to put it. This is the worst of the worst. Why? Why would CBS trade in what used to be a good programming to propagandize? Because we have become tribal, folks. CBS, ABC, NBC, they are not news channels anymore. They're propaganda channels. And they're siding with the tribe. That's just how it works. That's not a good thing for America. That isn't a good thing at all. And what happened when she was going into this word salad stuff they talk about, they used a different answer. And it became plain as day. Now Republicans are saying, we want the entire thing released so people can see what's going on. CBS, a private network, can tell the Republicans to pack sand. They don't have to give it out. They don't have to do anything. They're not responding thus far. But now you know, what you see on TV ain't necessarily what you get, because it's no longer who, what, where, when, why, and how. Now it's opinion. It ain't networks anymore, folks. It's 1984. It's propaganda. That's what we're dealing with. Just thought I'd pass that along. And maybe you learned something. Maybe.
Coming up next.
Well, do you want to hear the latest of what's happening out of the Democratic Party? Well, Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz was at a fundraiser in California at the home of Governor Newsom in Sacramento, California. Now we know California, very blue state, very left state. Well, at this fundraiser, Tim Waltz goes out in front of the people giving him money and saying, you know what? We need to get rid of the Electoral College. It's not right. Well, this is a wrong system. In America, when people vote, they should be able to control who wins. See, he wants to believe in pure democracy as the most people who vote power, and the power runs everything. And he wants to get rid of the Electoral College. Well, believe it or not, as governor, he signed a compact with a number of other states saying, hey, regardless of what the electoral votes say, whoever gets the most vote for president in our state, even though we're going to send all our electoral votes to who wins the popular vote. It's not the way the Constitution was created. But here he is saying, we got to get rid of the electoral. And the Democrats have been trying to do this for God knows how long. Now, I would take a change of the Constitution, and frankly, that ain't going to happen. Not that they're not going to try. The reason the framers created this system the way it did with the electoral votes was based upon the number of representatives of the state and the number of senators. Now, obviously, you could have different number of representatives, but you only have 2 senators for each state. Anyway, the combined total, you got to have a total of 270 out of that combined total to win. That's the majority in that particular situation, 270 votes cast based on the state. Rules now pretty much say if your state votes for a particular candidate, he or she gets those electoral votes. Now, there's a couple of states that don't do it that way. Maine's one and Nebraska's one. They're proportional. But that's their call in their states. That's what they do. Well, Congress, the Founding Fathers did this for one specific reason. So the places with a large population could not determine what happens to the rest of the United States on the smaller areas, smaller population areas. So they're saying, hey, we don't want that fully popular vote because in this case, you'd have the East Coast and the West Coast would combine up and they would basically rule the entire rest of the nation just on the people who live in the East Coast and the West Coast because there's more of them. So the people inside the United States, from sea to shining sea or from flyover country, which is where we are, really wouldn't have a vote on anything because the powers, the money, and the numbers on East and West would control America. Founding Fathers said, no, ain't going to do that. So there's Tim Waltz out there going, yep, we got to get rid of that. So here's what the Democrats want to do. Get rid of the Electoral College. So democracy, pure numbers, who's ever got the most numbers wins and runs. It's sort of like this. Let's say you have 2 wolves and 1 sheep. In democracy, the wolves can vote and say, we're going to eat the sheep because they are in the majority. We are not a democracy, folks. We are a representative republic. Keep that in mind, and that was words of Benjamin Franklin. Go look it up if you want to. We are a representative republic, not a democracy. I don't want the wolves voting to eat the sheep. Anyway, that's what's going on. Something you learned, maybe you didn't know, but now you know what they're trying to do, but hopefully they won't get it passed.
Coming up next.
Well, how many of you look at what's going on when the TV reporters say, well, according to this poll or according to that poll? Well, you know what polls are? Polls are canvassing of people. The trouble is, what people are they polling? What people are they talking to? This is what polling makes a difference. And let me explain to you why I'm bringing this all up. Because a few days ago on CNN, a network that pretty much hates Republicans, let's be honest, they had on their senior data guy, and his name is Harry Entman. And Harry Entman's standing in front of the big board, and he says, you know what? He said, if the polls in 2024 reflect the polls of 2020 and 2016, Trump is going to win in a landslide. You're going, what? That's not what the pollsters are saying. They're saying, well, Kamala's ahead in this poll, ahead in this poll. He said, yeah, the problem is the polls are wrong and have been wrong for years. And the trouble is, why are the polls wrong? Well, because pollsters are working for people. Pollsters are working for a party, a candidate, whatever. And that pollster, he's getting paid by that candidate or that party to give them the results they want to hear. And that's called how many people you interview, where you interview those people, what are they registered voters, how many of them you interview, are they likely voters, registered voters? And in a lot of polls, they'll say, well, we're going to interview more Democrats than Republicans. Well, if you're being paid by Democrats, you want to make sure that it looks good for the Democrats because they're paying you. So they interview more Democrats, and suddenly the polling numbers come out and say, oh, our candidate's ahead. Turns out, it may not be the case. And Mr. Entman, in front of God and everybody on CNN, said, polls could be wrong. They've been wrong in the last few elections. And if they are wrong again this time, Donald Trump is going to win in a landslide. Why is that? Because the pollsters are beholden to who hires them to do the polling. Now, there is one company that I happen to rely on, and they're not necessarily seeing all the big national polls, because you hear every news that, well, according to this poll, according to the CNN Siena poll, according to a New Hampshire college poll. Take a look at how they devise the polls, what they do, who they interview, and how many they interview. It's a big change. And there's one called Real Clear Politics. They try to take everybody together and try to compendize everybody and say, okay, the average of all this, here's what it is. Doesn't matter. Because if there's bad polling, you could take bad polling and average it out. You're still going to come up with a bad average. That's what's happened. Yes, there is one polling group that I trust more than others because they are not part of the cabal. They are not. They do their own thing. They're not hired by somebody. But boy, they give you some really straight answers. And right, other answers are saying, Kamala ain't going to win. Now, just saying, here's what you go. Now you know what's going on. On CNN, their senior data director says these polls are probably wrong. And if they are wrong, Trump's going to win in a landslide. Bet you didn't like hearing that, depending on who you are. Or maybe you did. Just thought I would pass that along. Something for you to know next time you hear people talking about this poll or that poll, because they ain't necessarily right.
Coming up next.
Well, have you heard the politician by the name of Hillary Clinton? Yeah, she's speaking again, and this time what she's saying is kind of interesting because here's what she wants to be done. She was addressing social media, like Facebook and TikTok and WhatsApp and Instagram and all these other social media sites that have become popular over the years. She's saying, hey, we have got to get control of social media or else we lose control. And I figured, she said, we will lose control? Which got me to thinking, who's we? Now, who exactly is she referring to when she says we will lose control? Is she talking about her? Is she talking about her particular party? Frankly, she didn't describe what we was, but one thing she said, there's a certain thing in the federal communications law called Section 230. And basically what it does is it gives social media sites immunity from being sued by content that people put on these social media sites. She said, well, they call it misinformation. They don't want to say lies anymore because it sounds, well, that's a lie. Well, a lie could be challenged. Misinformation, well, that sounds squishy. It sounds like, well, it's not totally correct. It could be sort of correct, but it's not really total information. Hillary Rodham Clinton is saying specifically, if we don't do this, we will lose control. And I'm quoting her here. We will lose control. Once again, I'm asking the question, who's we? Simple question to ask. And if I knew who we was, if she's saying we, all of America, is going to lose control, I don't think so. People posting on what amounts to is a village poster, if you will, because that's what social media is. People post stuff on there. It's like you go into the middle of the city hall or whatever, and you go into a bulletin board. That's basically kind of what it is. It's a bulletin board of sorts. You either buy it or you don't. But she's saying, no, we must put constrictions on this. We must tell the social media sites, you can't air this, you can't air that. Didn't they do that during political season? Because they said we got to stop this stuff from being out there because, well, it's not favorable to our side. So really what she's talking about is something very simple. We, I think as we means her group, her faction, her party, her tribe. That's what I think it means. Now, I could be wrong. I could be terribly wrong. She could be talking about America, the great American populace as a whole. But does the American populace really want social media to be shut down from certain opinions that certain sides don't like? And using the term misinformation, I'm so tired of that term. Why don't you go back to saying the real words, what it really means? If you want to call it a lie, call it a lie, and then back it up. And unfortunately, fact checkers, some of them, you can't blow them up with you tried. That's the problem, folks. That's where we are. Do we want control? Well, if we don't know who control is, we may be living with something we don't want. Just saying. That's all I got for you.
Coming up next.
Well, rather than talking about social media, sports, celebrities, or politics, what do you say we talk about world affairs? Now, most of you are going, I don't want to talk about world affairs. Well, guess what? Our neighbor to the south, Mexico, where a lot of the problems we're having on our border with people coming across, coming in from other countries and flying in and floating into the United States, is coming through Mexico. Well, it turns out that you may not realize this, but Mexico has a new president. Yeah, I didn't even know a new president was elected in Mexico, but sure enough, they've elected a female president. 62 years old. Her name is Claudia Sheinbaum. I'm going, wait a minute. Mexico? Claudia Sheinbaum? No Maria Gonzalez Tortiga Ornega, whatever? Nope. The new president of Mexico is 62 years old, and her name is Claudia Sheinbaum. And here's the big thing. She says Mexico will not return to the, quote, irresponsible, unquote, drug war between the government and the cartels. See, previously, the Mexican government had been fighting the cartels. Power struggle is what it is, because in a lot of ways, the cartels are stronger than the Mexican government, and the cartels have decided, let's just buy the government off, and that's what they've done. They buy off the police, they buy off the law enforcement, they buy off the judges. Well, now the new president says, we're not going to have any war anymore. It ain't worth it. Now, what is that going to mean? Well, not sure. If she is not interested in having a war with the cartels, does that mean the cartels are going to go, hey, we're going to run the rodeo? She's just going to sit back and eat bonbons. I do not know how she is going to work with the United States. I don't know how she's going to work with whoever this country elects to be president. I don't know. Is it going to be Kamala talking to Claudia? Kamala against Claudia. Two women. United States and Mexico? Oh, yeah, that'd be interesting. Or will it be Donald Trump talking to Claudia and saying, hey, here's what we're going to do, sweetheart? I don't know. But now you know that Mexico now has a female president, El Presidente. And she doesn't sound like she's Spanish because her name is Claudia Sheinbaum. Now, I don't know about you, but Mayor of New York, yeah, I could buy that one. But the president of Mexico? Hey, don't look at me, folks. I didn't write the script. I'm just telling you what history is bringing into your world. New Mexican president, no drug war against the drug cartels, she says. Guess I've given up letting the cartels have their own way. At least that's what it sounds like. Could be wrong. If I am, great. Let's just see how she deals with the United States of America, better known as Estados Unidos. I don't know what we call her in Mexico. President Sheinbaum? Really? Mexico? Okay. I may be wrong, but that's who it is. Welcome to the world, folks. Everything is changing, and nothing stays the same. That's how it is in politics. And now world politics has even got stranger. That's all I'm seeing. That's it for now.
Coming up next.
Well, if you like to hear good stories, well, this ain't one of those. Because you probably haven't heard about this, but the country of Denmark, not that you care about anything happening in Denmark, but what they have done is they have instituted a new tax. Yeah, but wait till you hear what it's on. They are taxing cattle. You know, things like cows, sheep, pigs, things that farmers grow for food. Well, guess what? The reason they're doing is because they're saying cows, pigs, and sheep emit methane. Let's see. Cow farts, I guess that's what they're talking about. They're saying, it'd make up 32% of the methane that's being produced comes from the cows and the pigs and the sheep. And I'm going, what? Well, the government of Denmark has actually passed a law that starting in 2025, each cow that you have, they are going to charge you $43 per ton of carbon dioxide that animal produces. And in 2030, it's going to go up to $108 per ton. I don't know how they're going to measure that. I haven't figured that one out yet. But you got to understand something at cows. Cows are ruminants. That means they got more than one stomach. They got like 4 stomachs. They eat grass and hay, and they turn it into nutrients because it moves from one stomach to the other stomach. And all right, they may give off some belching. Okay, cows belch. Big deal. Humans belch. Just keep that in mind. Humans belch, but they're saying cows belch, and they're producing all this methane and carbon dioxide. Well, the trouble is they're saying it's like 32%. No, according to the actual facts that are done by other studies, and we're supposed to believe scientific studies, are we not? It's only about 3%. But, hey, Denmark's saying, oh, no, we're doing this. I'll tell you why it's all being done. It's being done by leftists, absolute, complete, total leftists. And here's what they're doing. They're trying to say to farmers, it's going to be too expensive for you to raise cows and pigs and sheep, and everybody's going to have to become vegans. That's what this is all about. This is the leftists in Denmark are trying to put farmers out of business by charging them by carbon dioxide and belch tax from their animals. And you think that's that's just Denmark. It's not a big deal. Trust me, folks. If it goes off to Denmark, the leftists in the United States are going to go, whoo, that's a good idea. Hey, we ought to get that done. And if ever they get in charge, and if they're in the power, look for those to say, we're going to do the same thing in the United States. We're going to charge those bad, cattle farmers and pig farmers and sheep farmers, we're going to charge them for carbon dioxide. And eventually they're going to go out of business and become vegans. That's what this is all about. Don't kid yourself. There are leftists in the world, and they want to do things that you and I are going, what? God gave us molars, gave us teeth for a reason. I think we've been eating meat for a long time. Now, it's my opinion, but if you want to go to Denmark and start raising cows and sheep and pigs, get ready to start paying a carbon dioxide tax to the tune of, $43 a ton. Now, 5 years, $108 a ton. Welcome to Denmark, the land of the free, the home of the brave. Yeah, really? Fat chance.
Coming up next.
Well, let's talk about lawsuits. Not politics, but lawsuits. Namely, lawsuits involving Sean P. Diddy Combs. P. Diddy's in problems, right? He's been arrested for all of his stuff that he's been doing and buying thousands of bottles of baby oil and what have you. Well, all right, he's been arrested and he's in jail. But lawyers representing some of his people who are accusing P. Diddy of holding these wild sex parties, well, they've hired lawyers, and these lawyers are starting to send out the word to the public, hey, we're going to be naming names of people. But here's what's going on behind the scenes you may not be aware of. You see, some of these lawyers are sending out letters to people in advance saying, you want your name kept out of this? Start paying up, partner. We want you to open your wallet big time, and you're going to pay off my client, or else my client is going to bring a lawsuit against you, and my client has this, that, or the other picture, whatever, because there are videos. Trust me, there are. But who are these major people that are being contacted? Apparently these are celebrity A-listers. And lawyers are going, hey, all we got to do is threaten this person with a big, we're going to name them in the lawsuit. Hey, and they want their names up. They don't want their names listed there. They don't want their names anywhere. So they're going to write a big check. Well, the lawyers are probably taking, I'm guessing here, about 40% of that check. So this is a payday for them, big time. But for the client that they're representing, yes, they're going to make a few shekels out of the deal. But the whole thing is just to get their name buried and not put into the public notification. That's what this is all about. Because now the victims are threatening to come forward and name the big names, celebrity A-listers, who are at these events. Now, could P. Diddy end up sort of like a former individual who was discovered committed suicide in prison? I think he was in Rikers Island or somewhere around there. Jeffrey Epstein. You notice nothing has happened with that. No names have come out. Nothing has come out. Nothing is said about anybody. And yet that was the big thing, saying, hey, there's all kinds of people involved here. And there's been scratching on this saying so-and-so and so-and-so. But nothing's been released. And with Jeffrey Epstein being conveniently dead, he can't say anything. So is Sean P. Diddy a potential for dead? I'm sure some people would like to see that, but lawyers, here's the point. Lawyers representing these so-called victims are now sending out letters to certain A-listers, and I don't know how many, saying, you want your name kept out of the media? Write us a big fat check. Is this legal extortion? Well, I'm not a lawyer. Is it extortion? Pretty much. But is it legal? Well, if they're saying I don't have to speak up about somebody, nobody's forcing anybody to testify. And if you got to pay somebody off not to testify, isn't that considered legal? Don't know. Not a lawyer. But I tell you what, sure has a stink to it, doesn't it? Let's see if anybody pays, or let's see if anything happens with Sean P. Diddy. If he ends up, well, dead. Who knows? Find out and see what happens. The epic continues, and let's see how it goes.
Coming up next.
1. Well, back in the old days, and I use the old days of 10, 15 years ago, when I first took my kids to college, down at IU, they had an internet thing called MySpace, I believe it was called. And that was where all the kids went in, and in school they got their ID or name or their call sign or whatever the hell it was. And they communicated with each other on this thing called MySpace. Now, I didn't really know what it was, didn't care what it was, but it was sort of the internet, and they could contact each other and discuss stuff. Who knows? Well, that kind of disappeared. And then a thing came along called Facebook. And suddenly all the young folks, whatever generation that was, they decided, well, let's go onto this Facebook thing because they migrated. Well, here's the problem. Their parents found out about Facebook. And in order to keep track of their kids, well, parents themselves went on Facebook. And the moment that occurred, then the young kids saying, I ain't going to be here anymore because mom and dad are watching what I'm doing or watching what I'm saying or watching what I'm doing on the internet. So they left. And they went on to another site. Well, what's happened today is the young folks, you go Generation Z or Generation X or Y or whatever they are, they're on things like TikTok and WhatsApp and heaven knows what else they are. I just know TikTok I've heard about. And the only people staying on Facebook are old people like me, parents, because it's kind of become the marketplace for us parents to have our own, be able to talk to each other, discuss things, put things out and post things. The young people really aren't necessarily onto Facebook because they migrated to things like TikTok. TikTok's got 150 million people on it watching videos because that's what young people like today. They don't want to read words. They want to see videos. They want someone to talk to them. They want to be able to interact that way. Where, well, people in my era, we're still wanting to read stuff and take a look at stuff and ponder stuff, because that's what we do. Well, Meta, which owns Facebook and apparently also owns the TikTok, or not, maybe not TikTok, but a few other apps. Anyway, Meta is. And so Meta has Facebook, and they're trying to say, hey, how do we get young people to come back to us? So if you haven't noticed it on Facebook, they got these little short things, shorts and little video stuff, and just, and that's kind of different. Well, they're doing that to attract young people to come back. They want to get the young folks to come back in with this thing called Reels. And they started that back in 2021. And because that's what they want. So the young people that they do get to come back to Facebook, they're not on there, reading the articles or reading the things. They spend 60% of their time, 60% of their time watching videos. That's what young people do. So that's why social media has changed so much, for every group has their particular page they're into or that particular social media site. But now Facebook is trying to get younger folks to come back in to be on the same Facebook, be on the same social media outlet that their parents are on. Not so sure that's going to work. That's just my opinion because, well, I'm on Facebook, but I'm not really on anything else. Hey, what can I say? Stuck in my ways. Not different than most adults. But Facebook is trying. I'll give them credit for that. Let's just see how it goes.
Coming up next.
Well, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that Caitlin Clark of the Indy Fever was voted the Rookie of the Year in the Women's Basketball Association. And the vote was like 66-1. I believe that's what the count was. 66-1, and there's 67 voters. Well, the trouble is, in the WNBA, he or she who votes is secret. Now, you go into the NBA, the big basketball league, where the big money is. Well, if you vote to Player of the Year, whatever, those votes are public, so everybody knows who voted for whom, and they can stand up for it and say, here's why I did it, or whatever. That's basically how it works in the NBA. But in the WNBA, apparently it's a secret ballot. And somebody voted for the lady Angel, I believe her name is Angel Reese. Angel Reese. She got the one ballot, so for Rookie of the Year. Now, she's been out for a lot of the year because she got injured, and she's done some things, but as far as all the records going, I think Caitlin Clark has just amassed more records than anybody in history, in my opinion. But now what they're saying is, we want to publicly know who the people voted for, who are the voters, and how they voted. We want to find out that one person that voted for Angel Reese instead of Caitlin Clark. So let's get rid of the secret ballots. Let's get it out there for everybody. Well, I'm torn on that one. Only because, all right, if someone voted, are you going to tell them, hey, you're afraid you don't want to come out because you're afraid of voting for someone? Or how about, what if our regular elections, the things that we do out right, the political season, if everybody's vote was recorded so everybody could see? You think that's a good idea for America to know how everybody voted? I thought we'd do that in secret and private. Our call, our vote, right? Well, so now demanding that the voters in the WNBA reveal who they voted for the Rookie of the Year seems to be the big plea going on right now, because 66 of 67 voted for Caitlin Clark, but one lone voter voted for Angel Reese. And they want to know, who is he, who is she? And by golly, they should be able to stand to the public and stand on it. I'm not so sure. That's a tough one to do. Yes, I know the NBA is open and probably other teams are open too, but we want to go down that slope, making everybody stand and say, here's who I voted for? Just I'm bringing something up. You can decide any way you want, but now you know what's going on, and ESPN is leading the charge. I'm not so sure if their skirts aren't pretty dirty too. Just saying. That's all I got.
Coming up next.
Anybody who lives in cold weather area like Indiana or states around Indiana, or frankly in the Midwest, the Upper West, the East, you heard of the thing they always come on TV and talk about, the wind chill warning. We've got a wind chill warning. It's going to be really cold out there. Why, it's going to feel like it's whatever temperature. Well, here's the thing. The Weather Bureau has decided to stop using the term wind chill warning. And they're going to quit it starting this year, 2024-25. And they're going to replace it with a different way to describe cold weather conditions. Instead of wind chill warning, they're going to say, well, we've got a cold weather advisory. Stand by for a cold weather advisory. Or how about an extreme cold watch? That's what they're saying. We're going to have an extreme cold watch. Or worse than that, an extreme cold warning. So they're stopping using the wind chill advisories at the Weather Bureau. So when you think you're going to hear that, say, well, honey, we go outside, it may be 20 degrees, but it feels like it's, -4. Not anymore. It's going to be cold weather because the Weather Bureau wants to be able to tell you it's cold without wind warnings. Well, maybe they figure out you can figure out what the wind is doing. If it's cold, it can freeze your skin. Just saying. So if you're used to seeing and hearing about the wind chill advisory, and the weather guy comes out, well, we have a wind chill advisory, it feels like whatever. Yep, the Weather Bureau says, we ain't doing that no more. So it is now coming to an end. It may be sad for some people, or it may make you happy. But now the Weather Bureau is going to give you a cold weather advisory, an extreme cold watch, or an extremely cold warning. Now for me, I'd probably sit out there and go, damn, it's going to get cold. All right, that works for me. But no more wind chill. So if you've been sitting around waiting for that to happen, well, guess what? Starting this year, starting this winter, no longer will it exist. So if it's part of your lexicon, stop using it. Because the Weather Bureau says they're not using it anymore. They've got a new way of telling you it's going to be cold. Or else they could just play the song, Baby It's Cold Outside, and maybe that'll work. I don't know. It all depends. But now you know something you didn't know before. So wind chill advisories, gone. Weather warnings, yeah, that's pretty much the deal they've got. The Weather Bureau is changing, and it's time for you to change with it. Now you have been told, go forth and tell your friends.
Coming up next.
So do you know how you can tell inflation is really becoming a problem? Turns out there's an easy way, but a way you hadn't thought about. The number one maker of French fries in the United States, and they make fries for McDonald's, is now slashing jobs and cutting back production. You heard me right. The company that makes McDonald's French fries and French fries for a lot of other fast food restaurants are closing plants and laying off personnel. Now, why? Because inflation has taken the price of everything up. And people are going, I can't afford buying those French fries. I can't afford eating the fast foods. Because when you go to the restaurant, you get a burger and you get fries, right? Well, the problem is people are not going to the fast food restaurants because their prices have skyrocketed. Now, I know what they're saying. Well, it hasn't gone up. Anybody who knows the prices from 3 years ago and looks at the prices today is going to tell you exactly how much it's gone up. It's gone up big time. So what are people doing? They're saying, hey, I'm not going to eat at a fast food restaurant. Worst comes to worst, I'm going to pack a lunch and take it that way. Well, now it's happening, folks. The inflation is starting to show up because now the number one maker of French fries in the United States of America is saying, we're done. The company is called Lamb Weston. Lamb Weston is the number one maker of French fries for fast food restaurants, and they're closing plants in the state of Washington, right next to where Idaho is, where the potatoes are made, grown, and laying off hundreds of people. That's where I'm telling you, folks, now we're understanding inflation is really starting to hit, and you're figuring out how it's going to come down. And you don't think about it when you say, well, I'm not going to go to a fast food restaurant. Well, okay, bingo. French fry maker, closing plants, laying people off. Will burger companies start doing the same thing? Will the ketchup companies, the mustard companies? Will the company that makes all the potato cakes? I mean, will the companies behind all these various restaurants, fast food places, start laying off people too? Because it rolls downhill. It does roll downhill. And eventually, all those people who are responsible for the stuff that you buy or used to buy, people don't want. Jobs are going to be starting, the jobless thing is going to become a bigger thing than you think. Plants closing, people laid off. Because inflation is really starting to hit home in a way that nobody really understood. But now, thanks to the McDonald's French fry plant, now you know a little bit more than you did before. That's all I got for you.
Coming up next.
I will tell you something that you probably haven't thought about, but everybody alive today probably has listened to radio. That's right. Radio has been part of all of our lives, all of us who are living today and those who are no longer with us, because radio's been around for a long, long time. And you go back into the KDKA in Pittsburgh, many, many years ago, that's what we had. There was no TV, there was radio. Everything was on radio, even stories, Batman and detective stories and dramas, they were all on radio. Well, way back a long time ago, the FCC, when we had AM radio, decided that if emergency ever happened, something big happened or disaster happened or whatever, they would designate certain radio stations around the United States to have 50,000 watts of power, and no other radio station could be on that frequency but them. And stations all around the United States were granted the 50,000 watt clear channel designation. That's what it was called, clear channel. And those radio stations could broadcast in the event of emergency, and their signal could be heard everywhere. Well, it turns out that WOWO in Fort Wayne was one of those stations. We had 50,000 watts, and you could hear WOWO, oh man, everywhere you could think of. They used to get cards from people saying, hey, I live in this country or that country, I heard WOWO. That's what clear channel radio did. And it was designed in case of emergency, that they could broadcast everywhere and everyone could hear it. Well, FM radio came along, and it had nice sound, and it didn't have the crackling of thunder and everything else. But FM could only be heard line of sight. So a signal in FM can only go, 50, 60 miles, whatever it is, and it drops off, because the signal's not that good. And the car makers originally started their radios in cars were AM radios, and then FM came along. So they said, well, we're going to have to put FM in the car. So then they had AM and FM radios, right? Well, now the car makers are saying, we want to get rid of AM. We don't want to have that in our cars anymore. We just want to make FM radios. Dump the AM. Well, there's a big rush on right now to contact Congress and say, keep AM radio, and tell the car dealers, hey, keep putting AM in the cars. And here's the reason. If something happens, and let's say we lose all the power, did you know that stations like WOWO and other 50,000 watt stations have backup power supplies, diesel systems? And I've seen them run, man. WOWO has it. Power goes out, the diesel system kicks in, they're broadcasting. Power may be out, but they're still broadcasting. That's what AM stations could do. And they're especially the clear channel ones like WOWO used to be. WOWO is no longer a clear channel, and that's an ugly story I don't want to get into right now. But you see people advertising saying, hey, keep AM radios, and frankly, they should. Because if something happens, ladies and gentlemen, maybe you don't have electricity in your house, but if you go out to your car and start your car, or you got a battery, you turn it on, you can listen to AM radio, and you can find an AM station. And they can tell you what's going on. FM cannot do that. AM needs to stay. I'm just telling you my opinion on it. I want you to contact your congressman, your senator, whomever, the FCC, and tell them to keep AM radio. Because in the event of an emergency, if something goes to hell in a handbasket, AM will be there. Just saying, my opinion, but a lot of others believe the same thing that I do. Now you've been told, now go out and contact your senator or your representative. It's that important.
Coming up next.
Well, what do you say, venturing away from politics and sports and entertainment, let's talk about relationships. That's the people getting together. Now, where do people get together today as compared to when you meet somebody, how you meet somebody and get to know somebody and become a couple, whatever? Well, I'm going to take you back, well, way back, actually. I'm going to take you back into the 1950s because back then, well, how you met somebody, it would be through your family, through work, through school. You know, you met somebody in high school, something like that, the high school sweetheart, whatever. In college. And that's kind of where you started meeting someone. And that's the way things started out in the 50s. Well, in the 60s, it still stayed pretty much the same. But more was going into work because more people were going into work and women were going to the workplace. And so more folks were starting to meet together and get together through the workplace. And then, of course, as more people went to college, they'd meet people in college. And that's basically, so it was through your church, your school, your work. And that's how you met somebody. And through family members also, you know, hey, I want you to meet my cousin, you know, that kind of stuff. Well, that's all well and good. But starting in the, in the late 70s, getting into the early 80s, and actually, into the 80s and into the 90s, something new was showing up. And that something new was online. Now, I know that sounds really weird, but the internet was not really big popular back then, but online was happening. And it started to grow a little bit. Well, what's happened since then, going into today's, you know, what we're dealing with today, the whole concept of meeting someone through work or family or church or whatever, that number has gone down. And it's all gone down, whether it's family, work, whatever. All of those things are going down. The one thing that is massively moving up is online. That is the way people are meeting, getting together, becoming friends, getting married, who knows? That's because the normal stuff that we've all done in our lives, meeting somebody at work or meeting somebody through church or at school or whatever, that is no longer the way we get connected with somebody. Now it's via online dating. And it has shot up dramatically, and yet everything else is dwindled down to darn near nothing. So if you want to meet somebody in today's society, you know what you do? You go online. Who would have thought that? But that's how we have changed with computers in our lives. And that's how it's worked out for us. So if you've got kids and say, hey, I want to introduce you to Jeannie or whatever, or Johnny or whomever it is, probably not going to happen. Your son or daughter or whatever, they're going to go online and check out somebody's profile, see how they are, say, oh, you know, kind of interested in that person. That's changing dramatically everything that we know about getting together with someone. And frankly, that's not the way I see it because, well, I've been married a very long time, but it's somebody I met through, social. Happened to meet, been married 44 years. So that's what's going on, folks. Traditional way of meeting and getting together has disappeared, and now it's all being done online. Not sure that's a good thing. At least that's my opinion. Well, that does it for today's edition of the Pat White Show. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to follow us on social media for the latest Pat White Show, for all the news and updates. And stay tuned for brand new episodes of the Pat White Show coming real soon. Like what you're hearing? Make sure you don't miss an episode by following the Pat White Show on Spotify. Just search for the Pat White Show, hit follow, and get ready for insightful conversations delivered straight to your Spotify feed. If you enjoy watching podcasts as much as listening to them, good news! The Pat White Show is also on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel now for visual content, behind-the-scenes footage, and full podcast experience. Find us on YouTube at the Pat White Show channel. Well, aside from the fact that it is now fall is approaching, guess what else we're into? Another season. It's called the strike season.
That's exactly what's happening. Looks like some of the big industries are going on strike. The biggest one, obviously, is the Boeing industry. People make the planes, make the ones with the doors that fall off, the spacecraft that can't bring anybody back in. Yeah, that's the company. Well, the machinists have gone on strike saying, hey, the deal Boeing is offering 25% rate increase for the machinist. And the employees said, no, I ain't taking it. They said, we want 40% and we want all the pension returned. Whatever those happen to be, that's what they want. So they are striking, and it isn't just affecting the Boeing company. It affects all the other properties, all the other companies that provide services and goods to Boeing. You know, they don't make everything on the airplane. They bring, it's just in time. They get this from this company, this from another company. And this is going to put Boeing in a stop position, especially when they're working on a brand new aircraft getting ready to replace the 757. And I think it's called the 797, if memory serves me right. So Boeing is one on strike right now, but also some of the airlines are on strike. Flight attendants for one of the major airlines, they're going on strike also, saying, hey, you're giving us a 20% raise, but ain't enough. Now, why is everybody striking? Well, it's simple enough. When the inflation went up 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and the money, your money, started to become worth less, the people in the airline industry, the flight attendants, the Boeing folks, they said, hey, wait a minute. Our money is even worth less now than 4 years ago. They want it made up. This is just the tip of the iceberg. More of this is going to be coming down the pipe as more and more organizations, unions, and companies, they're going to say, hey, they're striking over there. We're going to strike too because we want to get made up for what happened because of the inflation. Now everybody said, well, the Fed is going to lower the interest rate. Yeah, they may. Quarter point. I mean, they could do it a half point. Don't know what they're going to do, but whatever they decide to do, it's not going to make up for the loss of the value of the dollar. That has occurred. That's why everything is skyrocketed up in inflation because the dollar is worth less. That's the problem, folks. That debt reduction act that Kamala Harris signed as the tiebreaker put $2.5 trillion into the money into the place where we don't need any more money. I mean, your dollar's worth less. Something you need to know about economics, how it works. More strikes are coming, folks. Just get ready. Boeing, the airlines, the tip of the iceberg. More is coming. That's all I got for you right now. Stay tuned because more is going to happen. That's it for now. See ya.